You're watching an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company.
What's up, Mob Associates? Jimmy Naples here. Johnny Chechitelli back for another episode of Youngstown Mob Talk Live. We are down here in Primetown, USA. We are actually shooting this in the TV studio here at Chauvin Technical School. So, Johnny, man, it's good to be back again.
Yeah.
You know, we've got some exciting stuff here. We've got some special episodes of the Vice Squad that are going to be dropping here in the next couple weeks, right?
That's right. Yeah, we actually wrapped up the first half of season 1. So we've done 6 episodes of the Vice Squad to this point. And in the hiatus here between our next 6 episodes, you're going to get like a kind of a mob talk version of the Vice Squad. So it'll be myself, Jimmy here, Rick Perello, and Vince Guerreri, the 4 members of the Vice Squad. We're going to be breaking down each of the episodes we've done so far. So the 6 episodes in a thing we call Dinner Talk. So look for that, guys. That's going to be on our YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/amazing podcast company. You're going to want to subscribe to that. We really appreciate it. And yeah, those Vice Squad episodes come out bi-weekly. So every other week, you'll get a new episode.
We also got, don't forget, we got the Steel Valley Syndicate store at steelvalleysyndicate.myshopify.com. Make sure you go in there and check out some of the great merchandise that we have in there.
I got a nice, I don't know if you can see it, but I got a nice
his Capiche shirt
Capiche
on today.
shirt. I like that one.
Capiche shirts we've been moving those, and the Capiche mugs. Everybody likes the Capiche mugs. So
Yeah.
Coffee in the morning. You know?
We sent one to Ed O'Neill because he was a friend of ours. He did a guest spot for us. And by the way, you'll be seeing some clips of that. That was from our live show we did at the Robins.
Yeah.
So you'll be seeing some clips from Ed O'Neill coming up on our YouTube page. So you're going to want to subscribe to that. If you're not subscribing to, Amazing Podcast Company on youtube.com, you're going to want to check that out as soon as you can. Subscribe to it. Give us a like. We really appreciate it. It really helps us kind of grow and do more things. So we're doing the Vice Squad pod. We got Youngstown Mob Talk every week. We're working on a Youngstown Mob Tour app. It's coming along. We've been working on this thing for months and months, and we've got over 100 spots. It's been a lot of work. We want to get everything right. Some of these locations, some of these places don't exist anymore. So when you put the directions to them, you want to make sure they're going to the right spot.
Right.
And there's pictures in there. There's descriptions. It's really going to be cool. We cannot wait to debut this app. Hopefully this summer. Youngstown Mob Tour. Look for that this summer. Anywhere you download your apps on your smartphones. It's going to be really cool, guys. And it's going to have the whole point of the app is so that you can take a tour around Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, Warren, wherever, and you can go visit some of these guys' homes, the old mobster homes, the hangouts, the old casinos, the bars and the hangouts that they used to go to.
Places they got whacked.
Some of the places they got whacked, exactly. We got the bombings, we got shootings, so ton of stuff in this app, guys. It's gonna be really amazing. We really hope you check it out. We'll give you all the details before that comes out.
And then we got our lecture series coming up this summer.
Oh yes, so that's another thing here, guys. We're debuting that right now. We're gonna kind of introduce that. We're doing a Mob Talk lecture series in Warren, 3 different Saturdays in July. So it's July 8th, July 15th, July 22nd. We're gonna do a 2-hour lecture series at Scope in Warren. That's on North Park Avenue. We'll give you the address and all that as we get closer. And, tickets will go on sale.
You're going to get tickets for at the door?
Oh, yeah. Tickets at the door. It'll be cash only if, $10, that kind of thing. But, yeah, we really hope to see everybody at the Scope shows. That's because when we did our live show at the Robins Theater back in February, we sold that place out. It was a great crowd, and we got a lot of feedback afterwards. People told us they wouldn't mind just watching a lecture series as well. That was more of a big guest show, big variety kind of show we did.
Right.
With music acts and everything else. But we said, okay, we can do that.
Yeah,
we can basically take our Youngstown Mob Talks, do a whole lecture series. So this summer, we're debuting that. We got 3 of them coming up in Warren in July. Keep an eye out for those. We'll talk about things like the bug, the Black Hand, the early Black Hand days. What else are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about Primetown USA, which is...
how Youngstown became Primetown USA, which, as Jimmy mentioned at the top of the show, that's where we're at today. We're downtown Youngstown, so it's actually, it's been called Primetown USA since the early 60s. We'll get into all that in the lecture series, so we really hope you come out for those. And of course, before we go any further, we have a guest coming up here, a special edition of Youngstown Mob Talk. We got a nice guest come on. It's done a lot of research, guys. This guy's very knowledgeable. He's been researching this stuff for years and years and years. We'll let him tell you all about it. But before we get to our guest, of course, we got to thank our sponsors.
Yeah.
So, we wouldn't be able to do these videos and these podcasts without our sponsors. So thank you to Youngstown Tile. So you want to check out Youngstown Tile in Toronto. They're in Canfield for spectacular flooring. Go bold, go local, go Youngstown Tile.
At Youngstown Tile Retail Design Center, we're your local leaders in residential flooring and luxury home projects. We have proudly served our customers in the local community for over 70 years. We carry top brands such as Dow Tile, Mapei, Schluter Systems, and many more. At Youngstown Tile Retail Design Center, we want to help bring your renovation ideas to life. For quality service, quality products, best-in-class customer service. Go bold, go local, go Youngstown Tile.
All right, so we're back now with our guest, Mr. Frank Sarna. Thank you, Frank, for coming to join us. Frank is a researcher, done a lot of research into Youngstown organized crime. First off, tell us, you're from Youngstown, right?
Yep.
What made you start researching this stuff to begin with?
I wanted to write a book about this whole thing, the bombings, the shootings back in the early 60s. And I started researching the Youngstown Vindicator microfilm, and I came across this guy, Joseph Suraci, and he was a demolition expert. And then he's dead, and he's murdered brutally. And then there's nothing about it after a few pages or a couple of days, and it intrigued me.
I got to say this, Joseph Suraci, the name is not one of the more familiar names.
No.
With you always hear the high profile names, especially guys who were killed in that era. But that's a name that's kind of gone way under the radar. And until some people in the Youngstown Mob group actually brought it to my attention, I was unaware of this name to begin with as well. So the more I learned about Joseph Suraci, the more I was very interested. First off, I just want to say that as well as talking to yourself, I've talked to some other folks as well, some family members of Mr. Suraci. Looking on paper, you would almost think it was Suraci, right? It's Suraci. And, my just initial inkling was that it would be Suraci, but I was actually told by his daughter that it is Suraci. So, yeah. Joseph Suraci, tell us who he was.
He worked for Charles Beck in a construction business. He was the part of the demolition, and he was a demolition expert.
Okay.
And when he started working for him, he wasn't a partner. Then he became a partner in '63. And he had several people working for him. And he didn't understand business. So he never paid taxes. His employees complained. They quit. But he was part of it. He was made, in the summer or spring, I think it was, he was made a partner. And
a partner in this construction company.
Right. And then on May 17th, 1963, Charles Beck comes over to his house. They go over Beck's house. Apparently he has an office there. And they're supposed to go over the paperwork. And about 11:30, they decide to go to lunch. And Suraci says, let's get ribs. So they're getting ready to leave, and Beck's wife wants to go along. So Beck and his wife get in a Pontiac. He gets in the Ford. They're driving down the road. They get to a red light, and he calls out to them, do you mind if I duck? And they're like, okay. So he gets into her car. They drive back home. And the last they see of him, he's driving down the road.
What does he say to him again?
Do you mind if I duck?
Do you mind if I duck? So he was saying, you mind if I get out of here and not go?
Correct, yeah.
And where were they going originally? Where was it believed?
The coroner's report says the airport tavern. But we don't know. But the coroner's report does say that he had food in his stomach. He had celery, onions, whatever. So his death didn't occur much more past earlier. Like his death certificate says 2:55.
Okay. So again, to recap real quick, so Joseph Suraci, he's a demolition expert. He becomes a partner in this construction company with a gentleman named Beck. They're supposed to go to a meeting, but Beck bails out of the meeting.
No, Suraci does.
Suraci bails out of the meeting.
Right. Well, I know he goes to the meeting, but he bails out when they're going to get something to eat.
Okay.
And that's at 11:30 at night. The coroner's reports is they're going to the airport tavern. But there's other restaurants along that way on McCarthy Road. There was the Beacon restaurant. There was all kinds.
Sure.
He went to the Beacon restaurant. He'd been to the Beacon restaurant. He may have gone there to meet somebody, but he ends up dead at 2:55 a.m. in the morning. And it's not till about 6-something, I think 6:30, that somebody notices the car on Oak Street in the grass with the door open. And he thinks the guy's sick or he's tying his shoe the way he's laying there. And he calls the police. The police go, and he's obviously dead. The coroner reported that he had like over 100 knife wounds in him.
Or 100 knife wounds.
Some of them in his head, brain contusion. So the force was rather deep, rather hard. Somebody was mad at this guy. Very, very mad.
Yeah.
And then the story just drops off.
So, Frank, let me ask you this. Do they have any idea of who maybe some of his other associates were that maybe kind of pointed them in a direction of why this might have happened?
In the homicide file, there's people that he knew that gave affidavits, but they all passed a polygraph test. And there was one guy who was arrested who worked for Suraci, and his name was Richard Double. But he confessed that he made it up. He said he killed him because he said he was bothering his wife. But the interrogation unravels it. He admits he didn't do it. It's in the newspaper, but then the story just dies. It just drops off.
So this guy says it almost to take credit for it to get
He wants to impress his
clout.
wife. Yeah, he wants to impress his wife. And they did an interrogation, which is in the file. And you could see in the file that he's just goofing it up. And he admits he lied.
Yeah.
But there's nobody that's ever been convicted of this crime. And that's the intriguing part.
Yeah, so you've got a demolition expert right after the decade of bombings, right? So
With less than a year of Billy Naples and Charlie Caballero.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to get at, was you've got the whole 1950s where there's about 80 unsolved bombings throughout the Mahoning Valley. And a lot of them with construction companies involved. Cafaros, DeBartolos, other construction companies. Yeah. And suddenly, then you've got the early 1960s war that happens. Sandy gets killed. Vince De Niro gets killed. Billy Naples gets killed. Cadillac Charlie and his son get killed. And then suddenly Suraci winds up dead.
Yeah.
So again, where did they find him?
On Oak Street, off the road into the grass.
And the door was open in his car, and he was just.
Yep, there was a blood stain on the door handle with fingerprints, but I don't know what became of all that.
And so he had over 100 stab wounds. Somebody was sending a message here.
Absolutely. Now, in any of these investigations that you've done, in the research that you've done, have you found any connections to any other organized crime figures, whether it be from the area or from outside the area?
He claimed that he knew Sandy. He worked for Sandy as a numbers guy. He also claimed to be a really good friend of Phil Mainer's. Somebody said that he was, and they were involved in some check cashing thing.
Phil Mainer, for anybody who doesn't know, is a notorious burglar of that era from Youngstown. He himself ends up getting murdered in 1975, and they did solve that one at least, but I believe it was Gaudio, right? Was it and his son were convicted of at least charged with killing Phil Mainer. So, these characters, these names come out. He was an associate of Phil Mainer. He probably worked for Sandy at one time. What did he say that he did for Sandy?
He said he was he ran the numbers or was a drop-off guy for him.
Gotcha. Of course, at that time, Sandy was involved in a lot of things. Right. When Sandy's heyday, not only were they running numbers, what else were they doing, Jim?
They were doing everything from a lot of burglaries, lots of robberies. They'd rob like Stanbaugh Thompson's. They'd steal the guns from Stanbaugh Thompson's and things like that. Of course, they were robbing armories, and because in the 50s they were moving guns through Pittsburgh with the Mandarino brothers. They were shipping those down to Cuba and Fidel Castro and all that, which is kind of funny because when you look at the history, so you have those guns and things that Sandy was doing. And then, of course, when we have all these bombings, you have, of course, Joe Suraci, one that gets killed, who's a demolition expert, right? And then Dominic Moya, who is also supposedly a demolition expert. Those two guys were right in that same time frame.
Moyo, I believe, was more of an arsonist, right? So he was believed to know his way around a bomb, but I think he was more... he made his bones, fireball places
with arson,
too.
But his Moyo's training in the military was with demolition.
Gotcha.
So,
you got these two guys who wind up dead.
Yeah.
Convenient timing, right after this horrific bombing gone wrong of the Cavalieros. Where an innocent child, actually two innocent children, were involved inadvertently, and the wide-ranging, the FBI's summation of that whole case was, the mob killed Moyo because he botched the job, and that was kind of like just a nice, neat little bow that they put on it to say, yeah, it was all Moyo. It was definitely Moyo. So then you hear a name like Suraci come up, and it makes you wonder a little bit. Was there more involvement here? And it gets more curious.
If it was simple, the Youngstown police would have solved it. If it was somebody like he was messing around with somebody's wife, it would have got solved. But a demolition expert and everything that was going on at the time, and then he's killed, and no one solves this thing to this day. There's something there.
60 years this year. It'll be 60 years.
Yep.
So this is one of the old unsolved cold cases in Youngstown history here. Tell me a little bit more about your research. Tell us everything the lengths you went to do some of this research.
Okay, the stuff that's like out there, like his marriage. He was married to Sally. I can't think of her last name right now. They got married in 1951. He was 19. She was 16. He was a truck driver. They must have got divorced. They had a son. He passed away in the 90s. They got divorced. I'm not sure what year, but then he married his second wife. His first wife died in 1960. She had acute hepatitis. He got married in 58 to his present wife. And then he was, I don't know exactly what he was doing, but he got into with Charles Beck, in the construction business. He worked for Beck for a year, and then he became partner.
Now, the actual research, I'm curious as to this. Tell us what you did to do any research. For any aspiring researchers and mob experts out there and authors, we got a lot of people in our group that are fascinated by this stuff and the research. We like to kind of tell them how to do FOIA requests. We've done that before. Tell us what exactly went into your research.
Well, I contacted the Youngstown Police Department and took a chance, and they sent me a 35-page homicide file.
So when you contact the police department, what do you do exactly, step by step?
There's a little form you fill out, and you say what you're looking for, and you submit it. And I was surprised that 35 pages of a homicide file. I was amazed.
Yeah. And you also traveled to the National Archives, correct?
Yes, in Maryland, yeah.
So, walk us through that.
I was looking into it. You were talking about the Canton robbery, armory robbery. Yeah. There's like 6,000 pages, and I pulled up 12 that actually needed.
Wow.
That involved Youngstown being involved in it. And then I also looked at all the stuff that they had, files and files and files. Some of it original, some of the copies. I spent like 4 years doing that.
Wow. See, this this is what we tell you guys. The amount of research and the legwork that goes into this stuff, it takes years. It takes years and years of just solidly researching. And sometimes, you'll go down this rabbit hole and you'll come to a dead end. A lot of times.
There, yeah.
A lot of times this happens. So it's a hard thing to do. And, really respect for, we have a lot of respect for these authors that come on here and these researchers that, share this information with us because, again, this is years that they've put into this. So we're just trying to get the history out there,
Let me ask you this. When you were searching the National Archives, was it a pretty simple process once you got there? I mean, did they have a computer that you would go look something up on that would refer you somewhere, or how did that work?
What you do is you send them a letter, and they respond back. And then I went there, and I showed them the letter. And then they had to pull up the records. The stuff with Charlie Cavallero, Bistanero, all that's jumbled all together.
Right.
And you have to just sit there and go through pages and pages and pages. The FBI, you just have to do a FOIA request. Sometimes it comes up something, sometimes it comes up nothing. And then you wonder why.
Yeah. So you've done all this research, and I'll say this, I reached out to some folks as well. Like I said, a family member, a daughter. She actually reached out to me through the mob group, the Youngstown Mob group. And it was, just connections, making connections. And she asked me about if I knew anything about her father as well. And at the time, again, the name was pretty new. I had seen it once or twice. I just had no frame of reference for who he was. So the more I learned about him, the more I was intrigued. I ended up talking to her, and she shed a little more light on family history, and that his father, what was his father's first name?
Joseph.
Joseph Sr.
Yeah.
So it was Joseph Sr. His father, Joseph Sr., was, according to his daughter, one of the original Black Hand members in Youngstown. So he actually held a lot of weight, even in his later years. So after Joe is brutally killed, the father still commanded a lot of respect, is from what I've been told. So, this is some heavy stuff here. You got big players here. Curious timing, right, to say the least.
Yeah.
A year less than a year after the Cavallero bombing to show up brutally murdered like that.
Which is kind of surprising with all the heat that was coming down, in the town at that time. I mean, they had, the FBI was here and they were actively pursuing, that case and investigating it. I mean, you can read from some of the files where they talked about, that nobody was doing anything because there was so much heat in town, right? So it's surprising that a murder like that would take place and there would be, very little evidence or no movement in actually trying to solve it or even solving it.
Yeah. Tell us real quick, who were some of the theories, I guess, of who might have been behind this, or his enemies that he might have had?
He was messing around with a lot of women that were married, single, prostitutes. You could look at an angry husband angle, but that would have been solved. This is never solved. He knew Phil Maynor. He said he knew Sandy Naples. He said he worked for him. I don't know how much that's true or not, but he.
What about just in the construction business?
Yeah.
At that time, I'm sure there was a lot of. We know there was all the bombings in the 50s, especially if this guy was a demolitions expert. He might very well have been behind a few of them.
I mean, they even tried to blow Sandy's house up the one he was having built. I believe it was actually twice.
Yeah.
And he was in Columbus at one point. I think it was in '63. He was in Columbus, and there was all these motorcycles around his house. People were bringing that up in the report. There's motorcycles driving all around the house and stuff. I don't know what that is, but yeah, he was involved with a lot of people.
So, and I believe don't they even say in either the police report or a newspaper article that he was a man with a lot of enemies.
In the newspaper article, it says he had 1 million enemies.
1 million enemies. In a town like, that was the year that Youngstown was officially dubbed Crime Town USA. Not a good place to have a million enemies.
And we've talked about that before, Johnny. You know, the size of Youngstown. Can't really hide anywhere. Everybody knows where everybody's hangout spots are. They kind of know where everybody lives, right? They know where the girlfriends are at, things like that. It's not like New York City where it's just so big and you've got so many people that it's a little easier to hide out here and there and, you know, kind of stay under the radar. We're here in Youngstown. It just wasn't like that.
This whole thing with his partner, Beck, too, there's so much there. These guys had, correct me if I'm wrong, $30,000 life insurance policies on one another.
Yep.
So there's a motive for you.
Right.
And also Beck was with him that day and suddenly either got ill or just whatever. He had to duck out. He had to leave. Right?
Well, it was Suraci that ducked out.
Okay.
They were going to go eat. But when Suraci says, do you mind if I duck? Beck and his wife go home.
Okay. So Suraci ducks out and then Beck never sees him again.
Never. It was somebody told him the next day he got killed. And then he goes down to the police station with his lawyer.
Did he collect his $30,000?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
That'd be interesting to find out if he did.
Yeah.
That would be a good clue.
Well, I'm sure he did. I mean, you're not going to, whether you're involved or not, you're not going to turn that $30,000 down, right?
No
1963. So, yeah, there's a lot here. There's, was he connected at all with, in retaliation with the Cavallero thing? Was it, just some jealous husband? I mean, probably not the jealous husband. Although you said there was something in his car. What did they find in the car?
Beck and his wife went to the police station. They said that they accounted for everything in the car except a purse. It was found underneath, I think, the front seat of the driver's side. It had the usual gloves, mirror. It had a comb. And in that comb was a hair. And they sent it to the FBI. And the FBI sent back their one-page report.
So you've got this woman's purse under his seat. He was a womanizer. We know he was a womanizer. At least that's, the research says. So who knows? I mean, a lot of interesting theories out there. If anybody has any information to shed on this, and you're watching and you want to, you're in the mob group, that's what this is for. This is, we're exploring history. This case is 60 years old this year. So one of the oldest cold cases, especially organized crime related cold cases in Youngstown. So, please, we welcome a discussion here.
Sometimes it only takes, one little piece of evidence to break a case wide open. So, it could be any little thing. So if you have some information on that, make sure you post it in the group. Reach out to Frank here. He's in the group. Let him know. And, we definitely appreciate the audience's help because a lot of times that's how you're going to solve these things. Frank, have you talked to any current cops about this case?
No, I think everybody that was involved in that case is gone. A lot of the people that gave affidavits, most of them are gone.
Yeah.
One of the affidavits actually lived on the street I lived on at that time when I was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he palled around with Suraci.
Just goes to show you what we just talked about, how small this community is. I did talk to Suraci's daughter, and she told me that she was interested to kind of investigate her father's death. And so for a long time, she worked with a Youngstown police officer. And for maybe a decade or so, from the 80s up to 1990, he was trying to help her get information and solve this case until, this is what she told us, that around 1990, 1991, this officer suddenly told her, we have to drop this case. It's bigger than you might think. So, you hear these things sometimes, in Youngstown, and, it's going to go down as a big question mark, but it's, what really happened to Joe Suraci and what was it really about, right?
It's almost too bad we couldn't get inside that police officer's head to kind of find out, where that connection goes.
Well, you figure too, we were trying to think if in 1990 someone wanted to squash this, right? Who was...
And what went down in 90? 90 was we had, 90 was in the halfway house, right? We had the bombing of the Cafaro.
Lenny was still in prison, I believe. He gets out in 91, halfway house, maybe? He's in the halfway house when Joey's killed.
Yeah. So I think he probably got out in the halfway house somewhere in 90. Because Joey was, August 91.
Yeah.
And then my grandfather was 6 months later in 92. So that's kind of how I keep those together. But, you had Lenny doing time. You had the bombing at Cafaro's headquarters, right? And then you have Joey's killing in 91. So you kind of have all that right in there at that same time frame. It's, who knows? Until we figure out kind of what direction that cop was going in, that would kind of lead us in the right direction if we kind of knew what he was.
This is not the first case, unfortunately, that's happened where there's an investigation happening that suddenly gets shut down, and the people involved are told it's bigger than you and I and everyone here. Right. So, that's happened a few times in a few of these cases.
And with this, what you just told me, it's more than a jealous husband.
For sure. I would venture to say so. It's just especially who he was.
What conspiracy theorists would say, right? Conspiracy theorists would say that when the police stop investigating something and they say it goes higher and further than you would imagine, what does that usually lead you to believe?
What's that? The police are involved?
Somehow, some form of...
It's all conjecture. At this point,
right, but that's,
who knows?
A conspiracy theorist would go that route. They would say the government would have to be involved.
I'll say this. After all the research we've done at this point, nothing would surprise me.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
But it's definitely fascinating. What'd you bring today? Did you bring... We'll post these on the group here, and we'll put them on the video.
I have the original homicide report, which is like 35 pages long, which is rather interesting. And most of the stuff is about his personal life that I've pulled up.
Interesting stuff.
Interviews Beck, his wife, several people that worked for Suraci that knew him. They all took a polygraph test. They all passed. But there's only one person that's been charged. He lied. He admitted to it.
He admitted to lying.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing. Nothing.
So, all right, last question, I guess, for you here. What do you think? What do you think is the reason?
It's got to be organized crime. It has to be. Because it's just like every other organized crime death. It drops off the pages in a couple days. It's gone. It's never heard of again. That's what I think.
And specifically, what do you think it was related to? What's your theory? We'll say what's your theory here.
He was a demolition expert. It's got to be something there. It's got to be.
Yeah.
His involvement with one of these bombings. Maybe he knew something. Maybe he was going to tell something. And they found out. Once they find out what you're going to talk, you're done.
Well, I think we're done.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yep.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate you coming in.
No problem.
Appreciate your research, too.
Frank. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Years of research is put into this. We like to give credit where credit's due. There's authors, there's researchers, there's people that spend years of their lives putting this stuff together. So we thank Frank for coming in and sharing some of this stuff. And again, if anybody else has any theories or stories or pictures of Joe Suraci or any of this stuff, reach out to us. You can reach out to us at Steel Valley Syndicate. I almost forgot there for a second. You can reach out to us at steelvalleysyndicate@gmail.com. Send us an email, or you can find us in the Youngstown Mob group. We're almost up to 30,000 people. So, of course, we got to thank our sponsor, Youngstown Tile. Without Youngstown Tile here, we're not able to bring you guys new content. So we really do appreciate it. Again, for spectacular flooring, go bold, go local, go Youngstown Tile.
All right, that's it for this week's Mob Talk. I want to thank all the mob associates out there for watching. I want to thank Frank Sarna for joining us here. We had a great conversation with Frank today. For Johnny Chechitelli, Jimmy Naples, ciao.
See ya.
Bye.
That was an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like and subscribe buttons and share it with your friends. It goes a long way in helping us produce more amazing content.